Are we living in the Matrix? Is the universe just one big simulation? What if everything we thought we knew was nothing more than virtual reality? Ponder the answers to these questions and more with me, Doug Rizzio, and my guests, DavoGato and Hey guys.
Hi.
Hello. Yo.
Those names are fun to say together. It's kind of cool that we both have pseudonyms for the show.
Yeah.
Let's do some brief introductions first. So, DavoGato, can you say your name, where you're from, and one other small thing about you and your work?
Sure. I'm DavoGato. I was born in New Jersey, and I went to study graphic design in Albany, New York. And I'm a digital artist who specializes in vaporwave, and I'm starting to learn and really love pixel art.
Awesome. Could you introduce the two of you too?
Yeah, we're both from New Jersey. We're from like North New Jersey. We're an experimental electronic noise duo, founded in New Brunswick in the basements. And yeah, that's kind of it.
Awesome. All right, so the way this is going to work is I'm going to start interviewing Dabo first for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then after that, we'll put your music video on the stream, and you can talk a little bit about that for a few minutes. And then once we're done with those two segments, we'll start talking about living in the Matrix. So you guys can hang out to the side, or I can remove your screen if you want. But Davo, thanks again for joining the stream.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So in more detail, can you describe who you are as an artist?
Sure. Absolutely. I love exploring things like color theory and different mediums. As an artist, I am not the best at physical mediums. I really thrive in digital environments. So I've tried things like 3D, 2D animation, pixel art, but I'm really drawn to glitch art as a form of like vaporwave expression because they go hand in hand. Glitch art didn't exist 100, 200 years ago in the same way it does now. We're on the forefront of it as a medium, and that's really exciting. And I want to keep exploring how that medium evolves and how I evolve as an artist too.
So for you, is glitch art like inherently, like inextricably intertwined with vaporwave and like electronic music?
Yes, I think they're all different facets of the same idea. Sometimes it's like nostalgia, longing for the past, or trying to capture memories or ideas we sometimes have, but other times we're like longing for a past that doesn't exist. Or an emotion that can't be described. And I really love that aspect, especially from the musical or visual sides of it and how they can work together, like an album art for a vaporwave cover of a song, or different types of expression, or even taking something familiar like a photograph or video game screenshot and completely obliterating it through a glitch medium.
One of my favorite things about that whole like broad genre in general is music that kind of sounds like it was made from the 80s or another period. It so much so that it actually sounds more like an 80s song than actual songs from the 80s. Like I love that sort of fake feeling of, oh, I remember this, even though none of us were probably born in the 80s. That's always fun.
Yeah. Longing for a time that didn't exist in the same way. We didn't even exist then, but we yearn for it.
Yeah, we're going to experience something that we never had a chance to. So what are some of your biggest inspirations from that medium? Whether it's just glitch artists or vaporwave musicians, something in between?
Oh boy, this is a fun question. I absolutely love finding inspiration in the unusual. So I'll usually look for the normal to be inspired for the unusual in terms of like vaporwave. I really enjoy early 2000s, 2010s kind of vaporwave albums, even if they're just 80s remixes that have been slowed down. There's a kind of magic to them. But when it comes to inspirations that are actually more contemporary, I guess I'm drawn to a lot of developers who don't intend to make glitchy products. And then there's ways to like break the game or change the audio in ways you didn't expect. And suddenly it becomes even more inspiring because it's an unusual way to observe a normal thing in a new, glitchy way.
Yeah, glitch art came about because technology wasn't working properly, which is interesting because it's a totally unintended consequence of these increasingly complex systems that we're using. And I think compared to other art forms, it's maybe there's an element of randomness in glitch art that does not exist quite in the same way through other artistic mediums. Even if you try to splatter painting on a paint on a canvas, it's still you're still somewhat controlling. I guess you can control how glitchy a glitch art piece is through different parameters, but there's something about it that feels more chaotic than just even the most chaotic paint splatter.
Yeah, it's completely uncontrolled. And that's kind of beautiful. I think one of my first experiences with glitch art in general was accidental. I was playing one of the old Pokemon games, and I was experimenting with breaking the game to find mysterious encounters with garbled text and garbage data that
Mm,
appeared visually. And that was frightening as a child. But looking back, it's like that was kind of beautiful because it was breaking in the established world in a beautiful, new, unexpected, scary way.
mm.
And it made some really cool glitch art as a product of that. And that's kind of evocative of that chaotic, that uncontrolled, that terrifying aspect of glitch art.
So is that how you got your start through video games and maybe other pieces of technology?
Yes, I got my start of appreciating and eventually making glitch art through video games and seeing what ways I could either break the game or modify the code in ways to have unintended or strange or even bizarre and frightening as a child, especially results.
Mm. So how did you first start doing it? How did you take that experience of glitch art through like a Pokemon game to actually making it yourself?
It was a long journey. As a teenager, I would use like MS Paint and just make basic pixel drawings and then corrupt them about. But it really began my glitch art journey when I learned Photoshop and began taking my own courses online, courses from other students, other professionals, and then just experimenting with the tools I had to push the randomness. I'd learn a technique and then just apply it 20 times to the same image and see what would happen. And as that chaoticness evolved, I learned how to control those effects, and my glitch art got tighter and more random, but intentionally random.
Yeah, like you learn how to control the randomness more.
Yes.
Interesting.
So now I can look at a piece and say, I want to do this, this, and this, and make it look completely thrown out by a machine, but it's all me behind the scenes.
So you started with something as basic as paint. You eventually graduated to Photoshop. Are there any technologies you're using now that are even more like advanced or fine tuned for glitch art?
Yes, I actually have experimented more and more with things like After Effects or 3D programs like Maya and Blender. I'm still learning, but the addition of time, motion,
Mm,
start and end makes it the piece come alive. It's something to have a still image, but it's something else to have something with a beginning, a middle, and an end that is evocative and glitching live. It's kind of beautiful in that way because it almost harkens back to the first experiences I had because they weren't still images in Pokemon. They were often transitions or environments, and
mm,
it kind of carries that all through time to today.
that's really cool. Yeah, glitch art in it more than a lot of other mediums is made even better by introducing that element of time.
Yeah, I still have a long way to go, and I don't have anything to show yet on that front, but perhaps next show.
So what kind of things have you been working on lately?
I'm currently working to learn more and more about game development. I'd love to make a 2D top down game of my own someday, and I'm learning how to do pixel art, but also how to make game engines work in a way that makes them totally controlled, but look glitchy. So I can apply filters or special tile effects or animations so the game looks like it's breaking, but it's totally intentional.
Gotcha. So are you? what kind of programs are you using for that? Some of the same ones you listed?
I'm using Photoshop for all the sprite work. That's the pixel art, and then I'm also using Game Maker Studio, which is a very easy to approach program for making 2D games.
Gotcha. Maybe we can see some of the artwork that you sent to me, and if you don't mind, could you explain some of the details or the feelings behind some of them?
Absolutely.
All right. Let me bring up. Let me share my screen. What if I can just share a file here? Maybe not. I'll just go into the folder. All right. So let's click on this one, and you can see that, right? Oops, that's for my job.
No worries. Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. So yeah, would you like to tell me a little bit about this art piece here?
Sure. The title is Bit Rot, as in like 8-bit, and then rot as in corruption. This piece was made evocative of the idea that technology is a living thing and that over time it does degrade. Disks wear away, hard drives fail, computer parts rust and break down. So how do you visualize that kind of erosion? Yes, glitch art is a fantastic way, but if it was a living thing, how would that glitch art look if it was flesh or something alive? And that was the feeling to go for here.
Wow, I love that you have such a prepared description. That's awesome.
Thank you. And
Some
I hope
people.
that, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. What were you saying?
I hope that all my works give a story to each person, even if it's a little different than my intention. The fact that you can walk away knowing something is really important to me.
Yeah, I love that because some artists make things without having maybe the clearest idea of what it is that they're doing or the underlying idea. So it's great to hear such a detailed response. Let me see if I can just scroll through them. Apparently not. All right. Let's
It's okay.
see this one here. Oops, that is not on that screen. It's showing up on my other screen. There we go. All right. So can you tell me about the Dogs of Hell? That's
Dogs
an
of Hell
intense
is
title.
it is an intense title. This is a fun piece. Again, going back to the Pokemon inspiration, there's a trio of legendary creatures that are often called dogs by fans, but they're actually like these weird giant cat things. But the point aside is, I was making a piece in 3D for a completely different assignment. It was during my undergrad, and I had like three large amorphous shapes, but my computer's graphics card decided to crap out on me,
Oh
and
no.
the preview decided to corrupt itself. And I said, wow, this is beautiful. So I took a screenshot of my corrupted GPU output, which was this image, and I ran it through its own corruption over and over until I got these amorphous shapes that almost looked like dog heads. And
Yeah,
evocative
they
to the
kind of do.
story, they go like hand in hand together.
That's really cool. So this was actually a real example of unintentional artwork, at least in its infancy when you first saw the image. That's really cool.
Yeah, and here it is before you, a error that became beautiful.
So it sounds like maybe Pokemon particularly, but video games have a big inspiration, or you draw a big source of inspiration from video games.
Yeah, I can't deny it. They were my escapism as a child. I was forced to read for school, so I didn't like reading. I love storytelling. I love stories, but I'm burnt out on reading. So I went to the next best thing at the age, which was video games.
So what is the story behind this one here?
Ooh, this is a fun one. Now, I believe, yes, the title is High Rise Vista. This is actually a photograph of one of the New York City buildings, I believe, near one of the brownstone areas in like near the coast of New Jersey. So it's right as you enter the city.
Oh,
And what I did was I took the idea of a photograph and brought it to its extreme. How did photographs begin? They began on film. What happens if you run film through an acid bath in the dark room? Well, it looks something like this. So I took all those ideas of the physical medium, how it could go wrong and go right at the same time, and
hmm,
applied them. This is all digital to the digital medium.
gotcha. Yeah, this one. Sometimes certain pieces of abstract art and glitch art is included in this. They can take on the appearance of like almost like a textile. This to me sort of reminds me of like a really pretty modern quilt pattern or something. And it's cool how this ends up turning into something so different from what it originally was.
Yeah, it was just honestly, it was a phone picture that was like upright and wasn't that great, but the idea of taking something that's not necessarily perfect and salvaging it and changing it into something beautiful and unexpected and completely departed from its original form is a good part of glitch art.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell me about memory leak now? This one here?
Sure. This is a fun one because memory leak. This is actually a little secret. I'll let you guys let in on. This is actually one of the tile sets for a project in game development I'm working on, shrunk down about 100 times, then blown up and repeated. So I used my own tile set sheets for the game I'm working on to make this. So in a
Mm,
way, it did come from my own work, just in a very very strange roundabout way. I make my own game, I export an asset, I destroy the asset to make glitch art, and the glitch art originally was inspiring the game. So it's a cyclical nature of just how do we make art from art to make art? This is the fun answer.
yeah, that's awesome. I really like this one especially. Um,
Memory leak also, let me just, if I may comment on one thing about it.
sure, I'll bring it back up on the screen.
This actually uses a Game Boy Color palette. I chose the colors specifically to resemble that of one of the 1996 LCD screens and what it could only display. So those colors are
Gotcha.
intentional.
Yeah, it seems a little more retro than the other ones. The like how rigid it is and the those exact colors. I imagined them being on some like Game Boy display when I saw this for the first time.
It worked.
Yeah, it does.
The intention came through.
So this one's a little bit different, I think, compared to some of the other ones. Can you tell me about this?
This
Neon
was a fun
Acetate?
experiment in Microsoft Paint 3D. I'm like, oh gosh, a new paint program. Let's try it out. Let's see what happens if I put my old skills to the new program in a new way. And it was just some shapes. It was a cylinder and a free-handed splash and a bunch of cubes. And I said, it's not that interesting. What can I do with it? So I immediately brought the image into Photoshop, added a bunch of blur effects, changed the banding to have slight glitchiness, and then of course ran it through a like 16-bit filter to resemble a really really old graphic, say a bitmap from a 90s computer program. And
Mm,
immediately it resembles, as you can see here, something from that era. So I took a modern program, a modern 3D object, and just crunched it down into its elemental assets from 20 years ago.
cool.
Thanks. I'm glad you like it.
That one almost reminded me of some sort of logo of something.
Yeah, if it was like on a neon sign in some cyberpunk future, it might fit.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're winding down with this section, but we're still going to view a few more. So, can you tell me about Nightmare?
Absolutely. Dreams are hard to capture. This one is a companion to Bitrot, so they were made about the same time, and they were made with similar techniques. Where the idea of like a nightmare, what does it feel like? It's an absence, something terrifying, the unknown. How do you capture that in glitch art? Again, going back to the Bitrot idea, what happens when something living is starting to die? And that's what this void here is supposed to encapsulate. There's all this beauty around it, and then there's just this corruption seeping through, ending forever somewhere else deep in space.
All right, let's look at the last two pictures before we change. So, what can you tell me about Pulse?
Pulse was made with color theory in mind. It's glitch art for sure that is designed to resemble textile use with screen printing or watercolor. And it
Sweet.
was chosen because it just feels kind of nice. It's comforting. It's like when you like take a paint brush and then just run it across the surface, see what the streaks look like.
This to me feels like it's ready to go as a vaporwave album cover. Like the orange border, this nice square in the middle. I could just imagine some text with some album name right over the middle.
You're right on the money. That was from a little experimentation to see how many album covers I could make that resembled things like Macintosh Floor Shop or blank Banshee, and I'm like, okay, let's just remove the text and say it's a finished art piece because no one will ever know. But
Oh wow.
you got it.
Yeah, that really came across somehow. I'm glad I mentioned that. All right,
Thank
and
you.
then one more that you sent me. And we'll look at one more after that. But can you tell me about transmission? I like this one a lot too.
Transmission is a fun piece. It's almost symmetrical, but not exactly. It uses similar techniques to the prior one, which was the idea of taking almost a painterly feel, but in this case, we decided to fully glitchify it so that these color bands that resemble something when a printer has an error or a file is saved improperly. And it's, again, going back to the idea that nothing is forever, but there's beauty in that. When a file is opened too many times or changes hands too many times, sometimes it has artifacting, especially if it's a JPEG. And this is a beautiful way to show that kind of artifacting.
Awesome. All right, we'll wrap this up by just showing one more. I wasn't going to show this originally, but you sent it to me and I liked it, but I wanted to use a real picture of you for your profile. So can you tell me about this here? Is this your personal logo?
This is my personal logo. That's right. I am an animal person, and I thought DavoGato, it makes sense it's a cat. So I have this little greeting cat, and I figured like the MTV logo of the 90s, it could be used interchangeably. So the pixel art stays the same, but the sphere around it changes based on context. So in this case, it was glitch art.
Cool. All right, so can you tell people where they can find you online?
Sure. I'm on Twitter, and I believe the handle is DavoGato_real, as in, yes, it's the real me.
Awesome. And
yeah.
What else did you want to say? Sorry to interrupt.
I'm always open for DMs. I don't use Twitter much because it's a little overstimulating for me, but anyone can always reach out and say hello. It's always fine.
Awesome. And we'll maybe put that in the comments or the details of the video. Now, before we switch over to the next guests, just yes or no question. Are we living in the Matrix?
Ooh, yes or no question. Ooh.
Yeah, just simple yes or no.
Yeah,
or
totally.
Or maybe. Yeah, totally?
Yeah, totally, maybe. It's on the yeah, totally, maybe, yeah, totally.
All right, well, thanks, Davo. Let's move. You can stay on the screen, but I'd like to introduce our next guests.
Hello. Hello.
Hey. So yeah, could you briefly introduce yourselves again and what you guys do, who you are, where you're from?
Well, yeah, we make noise on a simple level. We started out in New Brunswick, New Jersey. We're both from different parts of the state, though, both up north. Right now, we don't do much of anything, but we did used to play a decent amount of shows and recorded a bit, and we put out an EP last October, and that kind of culminated a lot of what we'd been working on from like 2019 to 2021. So here's our small cassette.
Awesome.
It exists in a physical medium as well as on the Matrix on Spotify, Bandcamp, and anywhere that you can type 4Ms into a search bar.
So we have some music here from you guys now. Is it okay for me to play it, or do you want to say just a few more words about why you like glitch art and what inspired this piece here?
Yeah, I really appreciate Davo's origins and like video game aesthetics and vaporwave, because it doesn't come out in our aesthetics, but definitely for me personally, a lot of why I gravitated towards noise ventures from those experiences with like childhood media and things going wrong and glitches breaking through, and you kind of get clued into this idea of like, okay, there's something going on underneath the pretty image that's being showed to me as a consumer. So a lot of our music, when we were first starting out, was trying to explore the way that improvisation could kind of I guess, help break through a lot of the superficial image you get with music. So we started out trying to do rock, um, and that didn't work. We just kind of kept, glitching in front of people, and we couldn't get a song right. And one of us would smash their guitars or just start playing feedback, and we just kind of figured like, okay, this is what we can do musically. So let's expand on that. So the song that we're gonna play is actually it's what eventually became our song "Passing Night," which is like a 10-minute improv piece with me running loops on Ableton and mixing them live, and then Nate playing phrases and manipulating feedback live. And it's on our EP. It turned into a really aggressive, like kind of sound collage meets beat poem type recitation. But this early rehearsal, it's our earliest one, so you get some insight into the kind of softer, I guess, origins of it. And the footage was recorded today on my train ride to meet with Nate. Which I don't know. I think it's kind of a sentimental thing because yeah, I live back up in northern New Jersey, and I've been doing that commute for about 5 or 6 years or something like that. So here's a nice little insight into I don't know what I'm looking at as I'm just trying to make music happen.
Yeah, thanks for all that. That was a great explanation. I also I don't know if I made it better or worse, but I also added some details to this video by taking Davo's work and applying like a transparency layer over the raw train footage. So I mean, I like the train footage and I like Davo's work. I don't know if it'll look good together, but at the very least, it's a nice visual for some nice music. So let's put it on and listen to it throughout. All right. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
No problem. I like the long, gradual transition from one place to the next. Like kind of like droning, like ongoing music. Like it's a good combination.
Yeah, it's kind of why we ended up naming the song Passing Night. Outside of the words that eventually got attached to that song were based on a poem Nate wrote, I think, of the same name, right? Passing Night.
Yeah.
But it felt that way. Yeah, we had about we had there like it evolved into some type of flowing thing that just kind of felt ongoing and eventually stopped. And yeah, Passing Night seemed like an appropriate name.
Yeah, cool. So that was Passing Night by
Yeah. The first ever.
Yeah.
Very cool. This is the first time that it's being broadcast or recorded anywhere.
Yeah.
That tape.
That version, yeah.
Yeah, that version. The first version ever. You know. Again, I highly recommend if you're interested to like listen to the version that ended up on our EP because it's a totally
Two worlds.
it's totally yeah, it's two different worlds, two different points in our lives, and we were talking as the video was playing that like that was just us in my living room, you know, and then the two of us we were able to produce this really calm and like sentimental energy. But then the moment we would take it in front of an audience, like, you know, in a New Brunswick basement, it's just like all the anxiety and all the pressure, like turned it into a much noisier and angrier sound where we would just kind of absorb what was around us and then push it back. Um, so that's how the song evolved further to what it eventually became on our EP. But then that first take, I just think is so beautiful. It's just really innocent and just chill.
Yeah, it's very soft melodic, and it's interesting to me how the song takes on a different quality totally when you're in a different context or environment.
Yeah, yeah, that's something we were really deliberate about, and why it was improvisational. It's like we had, and that's for me an influence of listening to jazz and reading into jazz and understanding how improvisation worked in that genre, where it's like as a player you learn your phrases and you kind of get a feel for what it is you're expressing through your instrument. We thought, well, let's do that, but with noise, you know. And I was working with Ableton, and I had a controller that allowed me to manipulate all of my loops and samples live. And then Nate had his guitar and many pedals, you know. So we met it. Yeah, we were very proud of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so we're reaching, I think, the last part of our stream segment here, which is to answer the question. It's kind of related to Glitch Art. I'm still trying to figure out a way to like seamlessly intertwine them. But yes or no answer, just to start from both of you. Or maybe, are we living in the Matrix?
What do you think, Nate?
I'm gonna say it depends on a lot of things, you know. And so I think it. I'm gonna say, individually, it has to come from your humanness. So I'm gonna say like maybe not.
I think like the whole computer matrix idea, like literally, you know, we're actually in a pod in mucus or something, being exploited for our energy, in a you know, in a metaphoric sense, yes. Like yes is a metaphor. No as like a pragmatic truth. I don't think we're, you know, I think life is pretty real. I think we are kind of in it. You know, there's a lot of philosophies that explore, you know, like the idea of samsara, or just like, you know, mediation, and like leftist media theory, you know. So I think there's ways of articulating it, framing it, but I think it's so important to you know, invest time in the people and communities and relationships that you form around you, because then that becomes its own little matrix, you know. And I think that's a nice matrix to live in. So it's like,
I don't think this is a yes or no answer.
No, yeah, it's a very I'm putting a lot of pressure on you by making you go down one of those lanes. It's not a simple answer.
yeah.
So I think there may be three ways that you could interpret that question, right? Is a sociological matrix, which you touched upon, a technological matrix through all of the media that we're, you know, surrounded by and consume. And then there's the more literal interpretation, which is a cosmological matrix, or like some deeper layer of reality. So what are your thoughts on that? And then we'll get to Davo's thoughts too.
You know, we're both kind of into the like dropout mindset, I would say, of like the technological end. Like I'm still active on our Instagrams and social media, and but Nate isn't, you know. So I think there's ways that once you recognize the matrices you live in, you can engage with the ones that you like and the ones that you don't. I think yeah, you can, like, all of them are matrices, you know. You live in just a web of relationships and perceptions. And yes, but you know, it's not a bad thing. And I think once you can map them and recognize the ones you want to work with and want to live in, then I think that leads to a much more enjoyable experience in the simulation.
So being in a matrix doesn't have to be a bad thing. You can have different
No.
types of matrices around you.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Nate, can
What
you
about-
elaborate more on that too? What are your thoughts?
Oh, well. Well, I'd say I guess I'm more of a visceral person, and so um, hmm, going down the matrix hole, I could see more like I think the nearest I get to the matrix is maybe like conceptualizing spirituality. I guess because like if you're looking at it from like a I guess like a almost a Christian perspective, like isn't this the matrix? You know, yeah, heaven's the reality,
Yeah.
heaven's mother,
That's
and
actually
so
a great point. Yeah,
yeah. See,
it's
you
the
know,
real world.
if you look at it from that perspective, it's like I mean, not that I necessarily do, but just exploring the many matrices, I can see a lot of like reality, which is kind of ironic in the Matrix. You see what I'm saying? Like this, it's more grounded than one would think. Oh wow! And quite literally, we have a grounded Matrix right here.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
was that like pre-prepared or is it just laying around?
No,
Just hanging out.
Yeah. That's so
Cool.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that, Davo? Do you think that we live in a matrix in a sociological way, a technological way, or like a cosmological kind of spiritual way?
I said yes earlier, but that was a yes because of my reasons, and I'll explain them now.
Sure.
Yeah, in a way, we kind of do live in a matrix in terms of like our technology. We have a second self that kind of lives on its own within our media and how
Mm.
we interact with them. And that self is the perception of that media. And that's not really our true selves. Like the person you see before me is different than the person I present on social media, different than my experiences as categorized and cataloged by media. So being off the grid in some ways is kind of separating yourself from that expectation
Mm.
because that is a matrix. That is how people perceive you. And it's kind of scary sometimes.
Yeah. What ways are it scary? Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. It isn't always the truth. People's depth, people's experiences can't really be boiled down to just an interaction of pictures and comments. I think there's so much more depth and emotion and experiences and events in time that happen and then are gone. The beauty of impermanence can't really always be captured by our media. And
Yeah.
I think that in a way, maybe there is like a cosmological matrix. Like stated earlier, I don't think we're living in pods in some supercomputer being harvested, but there's definitely a beauty and a question in seeing patterns around us. Yes, we're
Mm.
pattern seeking people, but sometimes things line up a little too well for it to be, oh, is that really a coincidence? Is that really just chance? Because it keeps happening. Or the phenomenon where you hear something for the first time and then you see it everywhere. And it's like,
Mm.
I've never seen that before. Where did that come from?
That's
And
very
suddenly
true.
everything's like protagonist syndrome. And it's like, wait a second, this isn't my story. So why are things lining up like that?
Do you feel like you often experience those glitches in the matrix?
Yeah, it's hard to deny that it's definitely there. I don't know if it's just my wishful thinking, but there's definitely like, oh, maybe there's a higher power to this, a higher explanation. Maybe it's simulation theory. Maybe it's just, my silly brain, but it can't be denied there's something interesting going on there.
So for you, Matrix takes on not just a technological connotation of the media that we're surrounded by, but there might also be some underlying structure uh, behind reality in a weird way that maybe we don't completely understand.
Yeah, but at the same time, it doesn't really invalidate to me. Just if things are a simulation or we're just some code in some cosmic thing, it doesn't matter because it doesn't make our experiences any less real. It doesn't matter what the source of it is. We're still here now, wherever here is, living our lives and making connections with the ones we love and making art and music and leaving an impact to exist. It's beautiful.
So even if we are in sort of simulation, like the point is to be here in the simulation. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Is
So
to do the things in the simulation.
let's exist. Why not?
What do you guys think? Are we in an actual simulation of the sort? Like on a
Depends on how much deja vu I experience a single
Yeah.
day. Then it's
I do enough spontaneous and manic things in my mind that I'm like, okay, not every day is totally the same. It depends how you look at it, you know. I think there's always going to be small serendipitous moments that happen, and things echo, and the best thing to do is just accept them and embrace them.
Yeah, just be here now,
Yeah, no, totally.
regardless of anything else, because whether it is or isn't, you're still here.
Any more thoughts, Nate?
well, the only thing I can think of is consistently, like, who knows if it's, just the way our brains function, but I'll consistently have these moments where I'll be like living in daily time, and I'll stop and just kind of like observe and be like, I swear I've had this thought like far off in the distance before this, and I'm here now. And it's like this point, and you're like, and it's always a benign thing. It's always like, oh, like being at a I don't know, like a corner store buying like a flower, or like who knows, whatever it could be, holding a nail, I don't know. But then you stop, I stop, and I go, oh wow, I've been here before mentally. It's like, so it's you could, I guess you could, if we're going through the matrix, it's definitely, it shows itself at some points, whether that be the matrix, whether that be just maybe patterns we experience. But I think if I want to be more playful, I think I'd definitely say we could definitely, that Matrix definitely is unraveling itself. We got the movie right here. We watch,
We just play it all day, and
yeah.
One interesting thing that happened in my first episode, the guy I was interviewing, he mentioned a book called Creative. Well, he didn't even mention the book. He mentioned something called creative visualization, and that it's like a practice that helps him with his art and his life. And it just so happened that I had a book titled Creative Visualization right here. And the moment he brought it up, I pulled it down and said, "You mean something like this?" And his eyes just widened, because that was the exact book that he was talking about. Now, I think it was just a cool coincidence, but it does make me wonder, like, was there some special serendipity to that moment?
Mm-hmm.
It can't be ascribed to just random coincidence.
I'll say I've experienced so much, and maybe it's just the way music connects people, but I feel music in terms of its recorded medium has such the power to bring people together and create serendipitous moments, especially the nerdier you get about it. Where I'll go record shopping fairly regularly, and I'll just hope, chance on certain records that either I've been looking for, or that I'm aware of the people who've worked on them, and there's a type of energy I feel involved in that, and just kind of having, because the process of finding records is pretty, tedious, and it is spontaneous to just bump into something that you might not expect to see, but that it finds you, like a record that a friend of yours told you about like a month ago, and then suddenly it's right there in front of you, the moment you walk into a store. I think outside of, there's ways of, it's coincidence, sure, but I think there is a more cosmic power to those type of moments of just, stumbling upon something in the wild, and taking it into your life.
Awesome.
No.
So we're nearing the hour mark. So I want to start wrapping things up, but you guys have all been great. It feels like the time just flew by. It doesn't feel like a whole hour.
Yeah.
If you have any last thoughts about either your artwork, or what you're doing, how glitch art relates to the Matrix, anything at all.
I guess I'll take a moment. Let me think. Because glitches and aesthetic was something that I tried using a bit more on the Instagram, and using that as a way of kind of what I felt was being disruptive with the story feature on Instagram, where for the most part it's overtaken by a lot of like flyers or informatics or people sharing their lives. But
Mhm.
there was a period of time that I was using an app called Glitch Lab, which I find really accessible and useful, where you can just take a base image and there's a ton of sliders and saturation effects and distortion effects you can apply onto an image. And I think that really in in a media culture where we're so immersed in the images we make, I think that I think the line gets blurred between whether we're really creating them or more being incited to make them. I think using or applying glitch aesthetics or a kind of embracing um, glitch practices, I think is a good way of reclaiming a kind of form of like aesthetic autonomy, at least online. Going back to the idea of we have these virtual personas. It's
Hmm.
like, how do I set my persona apart from the kind of consumer persona that a lot of the social media outlets kind of force onto us, where it's like take a selfie, tag your brands, tag everything that you like. It's like how do you break away from that while still engaging with it? How do you play with it? How do you play in the matrix? Like, it's like,
Yeah, no one is immune to that feeling of needing to, you know, I don't know, start a business with your art. Like,
yeah,
and that's kind of what this is too, partly. Although it also is just a fun thing to do.
yeah.
Any last thoughts between either Nate or Davo before we head out?
Go ahead. If you want.
No, I don't think I have.
Okay.
I don't think I have any.
Sorry to
Yeah.
keep
That's
putting pressure
okay.
on Nate.
I just wanted to say I really like how you combined music and art in two different mediums with people. Like it's not like you brought musicians and artists together, Doug, and that's really cool because they are two sides of the same coin when it comes to certain things. And
Hmm.
I can definitely say I listen to music all the time. I'm always creating with music in the background, and it kind of fuels me. So I want to thank because it's beautiful. What you make inspires people like me, and then what people like me make usually inspires people like you. It's this beautiful
Exactly. Yeah.
cycle.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
very cool.
thank you. Thank you for saying that. I love that too. All right, so we're at an hour. So where can we find you online? Where can we find and where can we find Davo?
You can find us jokingly anywhere you can type forums in a search bar, but to be more specific, if you took New Brunswick or New Jersey, you can find us a little easier. We're on Bandcamp,
On Spotify.
and then there's other links you could follow from there. I highly recommend checking out our last EP. It's a good collection of what we sounded like before and throughout the pandemic. We don't have any real plans for the future right now, but if inspiration finds us, then that's where you can find us in those places.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And Davo, where can everyone find you?
Okay, so you could find me on Twitter under DavoGato_real because it's the real me. It's not a fake. And hopefully one day I'll be having a YouTube channel and a website open up that relate to my content and the things I make. And I hope to have that personal connection and not be like a brand, but a person who's just making cool stuff. And yeah, just if you want to say hi or reach out, just contact me.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope to see that soon too. All right, guys, this was awesome. I'm gonna take you out of the screen now, but that was DavoGato, that was M, Sorry. My name is Doug Rizzio. And just to close this off, are we living in the Matrix? Is the universe just one big simulation? Is everything we thought we knew nothing more than virtual reality? Ponder the answers to these questions and more next time on Glitch in the Matrix. Bye.